Commander Jake Morrison stood at the window of Harmony Point Station, watching the stars. He had never seen anything like this place before. The station was huge, made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow from inside. Ships from 7 different alien races moved around it like busy insects. Jake was nervous, but tried not to show it. This was humanity's first real meeting with the Zephyrian collective. Earth had been trying to make contact for months after the aliens found their ships near the edge of human space. "Sir, they're ready for us," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was Jake's security chief, a tough woman who always kept her weapon ready. The aliens had said humans could bring guards, but Jake wondered if that was a mistake. Jake walked into the meeting room. It was massive, with a ceiling so high he could barely see it. 7 different aliens sat at a curved table. They all looked different from each other, but they all stared at Jake like he was some kind of bug. The one in the center spoke. Its voice came from a machine that turned its words into English. "I am High Speaker Vorth Ak of the Zephyrian Collective. You are the human leader." "Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth ship Endeavor," Jake said. He tried to keep his voice steady. "We're honored to meet you." "Honor is earned," Vorthak said. "You will give us your cultural archives, your species history, art, and knowledge. We must study them." Jake felt his stomach drop. The cultural archives contained everything about humanity. Every book, every song, every piece of art. It was Earth's entire soul stored in databanks. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that," Jake said. "Those archives contain private information about our people. We'd be happy to share some things, but not everything." The aliens looked at each other. Vorthak's skin changed color, turning a dark red. "You refuse our request?" "I'm asking for time to talk to my government." "This is a big decision," Jake said. "There is no discussion." "You will comply or face consequences," said another alien. This one looked like a giant insect with too many eyes. Amy stepped forward. Her hand moved toward her weapon, but she didn't draw it. "Sir, maybe we should return to our ship and think about this." Suddenly, the room filled with a loud alarm sound. Red lights flashed everywhere. A floating robot moved toward them, making clicking sounds. "Enforcement drone activated," Vorthak said. "You showed aggression. Your guard reached for a weapon." "She didn't draw it," Jake said. "She was just being careful." "Intent to harm is the same as harm," the insect alien said. "You will surrender your weapons." "We can't do that," Amy said. "We're here on a peaceful mission, but we have the right to defend ourselves." The floating robot moved closer. Jake could see weapons coming out of its sides. Other aliens in the room started backing away from their table. "You will comply," Vorthak said. Jake made a choice that would change everything. "No, we came here in peace, but we won't be bullied. If you want to talk, we'll talk. If you want to fight, we'll leave." The robot suddenly jerked forward. Amy pulled Jake back, but the machine kept moving. Its weapons were charging up, making a high whining sound. Then something went wrong. The robot started spinning in circles. Sparks flew from its body. It crashed into a wall and exploded in a shower of metal and fire. A small alien that looked like a lizard with fur was thrown across the room by the explosion. It hit the ground hard and didn't move. "Medical emergency," Vorthak said into a communication. "Device. Civilian injured during enforcement action." Jake ran toward the hurt alien, but more robots appeared and blocked his way. Amy drew her weapon now, but she kept it pointed at the floor. "We want to help," Jake said. "Let us help your injured person." "You caused this," Vorthak said. "Your aggression made our drone malfunction. You are responsible for harm to a collective citizen." "That's not true," Jake said. "Your robot broke down on its own. We didn't touch it." But the aliens weren't listening. More enforcement drones filled the room. Jake counted at least 20 of them, all pointing weapons at him and Amy. Commander Jake Morrison of Earth, Vorthak, sighed, "You are under arrest for violation of the Universal Justice Protocol. You showed primitive aggression and caused harm to come to a peaceful citizen of the collective." "This is insane," Amy said. "We didn't do anything wrong." "Your species is new to galactic society," Vorthak said. "You do not understand proper behavior. The collective will teach you through our justice system. Energy beams shot from the drones." Jake felt his muscles stop working. He couldn't move or speak. Amy fell down next to him, her eyes wide with shock dot as the aliens carried them away. Jake heard Vorthak talking to someone on his communication device. "Contact the human ambassador," Vorthak said. "Tell her that her people will face trial in the Supreme Arbitration Chamber. This is a great honor for such a primitive species. We do not usually allow lesser races into our courts." Jake tried to fight against whatever they had done to him, but his body wouldn't listen. He could only watch as they dragged him toward a ship. Through the window, he could see the Endeavor in the distance. His crew was waiting for him to come back. He wondered if he would ever see them again. The last thing Jake heard before they put him in some kind of sleep chamber was Vorthak talking to another alien. "The trial will be broadcast across the collective," Vorthak said. "All species will see what happens to those who defy our authority. This human will serve as an example that resistance is futile." Jake wanted to tell them they were wrong. Humans didn't give up easily. But the chamber filled with gas, and everything went dark. Jake woke up in a cell made of the same glowing crystal as the station. Everything was white and cold. His head felt fuzzy, like someone had been digging around in his brain while he slept. "Commander Morrison?" A voice called from the next cell. It was Amy. "Are you okay, sir?" "I think so," Jake said, though he wasn't sure that was true. "What happened to us?" "They put us in some kind of sleep," Amy said. "I think they did something to your mind. They kept asking me questions about you, about our mission, about Earth. I didn't tell them anything important." Jake tried to remember the last few hours, but everything was blurry. He had strange memories that didn't feel real. In them, he was confessing to crimes he didn't commit. A door opened in the wall that Jake hadn't even seen before. A human woman walked in. She was tall and thin, with dark hair and tired eyes. "Commander Morrison, I'm Linda Parker. I'm a lawyer from Earth. I'm here to defend you." Jake stood up. "How did you get here so fast?" "I've been traveling for 3 weeks," Linda said. "The collective contacted Earth right after they arrested you. They said they were giving humanity a great honor by letting you have a trial." 3 weeks, Jake said. "I've been asleep for 3 weeks?" Linda nodded. "They kept you unconscious while they prepared their case." "Commander, I need to tell you something. The Zephyrian justice system isn't like ours. It's not about finding out if you're guilty or innocent." "What do you mean?" Linda sat down on a crystal chair that grew out of the floor. "I've been studying their laws for the past month. I've talked to prisoners from other species. The Supreme Arbitration Chamber has never let anyone go free. Not once in 800 years. Jake felt cold inside. Never? The system exists to show everyone that the collective can't be challenged. They don't care about evidence or truth. They just want to make an example out of anyone who doesn't obey them." Amy's voice came from the next cell. "So this is all fake?" "Worse than fake," Linda said. "They have a confession from you, Commander. They recorded it while you were unconscious. In it, you admit to planning an attack on the collective." Jake's hands turned into fists. "I never said that." "I know. They used machines on your brain to make you say things. But the judges will accept it as real evidence. Can't you prove it's fake?" Linda shook her head. Defense lawyers aren't allowed to question witnesses. We can't present our own evidence. We can't even speak while the prosecution is making their case. All I can do is ask for mercy after they prove you're guilty. Jake sat down hard. This wasn't a trial. It was theater. How many species know about this? All of them. Every race in the collective has had people go through this system. They all learned the same lesson. Don't fight back, or this will happen to you. So everyone just gave up? What choice did they have? Linda said, the collective controls trade, communication, everything. If a species fights back, they get cut off from the galaxy. Their people starve. Jake thought about Earth, about his wife and kids back home, about all the humans who were counting on this mission to work. There has to be something we can do, he said. Linda looked around the cell like she was checking for listening devices. Then she whispered, there might be. I found something in their old laws, something they forgot about. Before she could explain, alarms started ringing. The cell door opened and floating robots came in. Time for trial preparation, one of the robots said in a flat voice. The accused will come with us. They took Jake to another room. This one was huge, with seats for thousands of people. At one end was a raised platform with 7 chairs. The judge's bench. Tomorrow you will stand here, said a Zephyrian official. High Arbiter Kethver will present the evidence against you. You will listen in silence. When he is done, your lawyer may ask for mercy. Then the judges will decide your punishment. What? About proving I'm innocent? The official looked confused. Innocent? You were arrested. That means you are guilty. The trial is to decide how to punish you. Jake stared at the empty courtroom. Tomorrow, it would be full of aliens watching him get destroyed. The broadcast would go out across the galaxy, showing everyone what happened to people who stood up to the collective. That night, back in his cell, Jake could hear Amy talking to someone. It was Captain Ryan Webb, his first officer. Somehow, Ryan had gotten into the prison. I smuggled myself in with the Earth diplomatic party, Ryan whispered. I've been recording everything. The way they treat prisoners, the fake evidence, all of it. What good will that do? Amy asked. Maybe nothing, Ryan said. But if we're going down, at least people will know the truth. Jake closed his eyes. Tomorrow, the collective would try to break him in front of the whole galaxy. They wanted to show everyone that humans were just another weak species that would bow down to their power. But Jake had been in the military for 20 years. He had fought in wars and survived disasters. He had never given up before, and he wasn't going to start now. Even if he couldn't win, he could show them what humans were really made of. The next morning, they brought him to the courtroom. Thousands of aliens filled the seats. Cameras floated everywhere, broadcasting to billions of people across the galaxy. High Arbiter Kethver stood up. He was tall and thin, with skin like black metal. His voice echoed through the room. Today, we judge a human who dared to threaten the peace of the collective. Let this trial show all species what happens to those who choose aggression over harmony. Jake stood straight and looked Kethver in the eyes. He wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing him afraid. The trial was about to begin. High Arbiter Kethver began his case like he was reading from a script. He showed the recording of Jake's forced confession, playing it over and over. He brought witnesses who said they saw Jake planning to attack the station. He presented fake evidence that made it look like humans were violent monsters. Jake had to sit quietly and listen to lies about himself and his people. Every time he tried to speak, the robots would point their weapons at him. Linda could only sit next to him, taking notes and waiting. The worst part was watching the audience. The aliens in the courtroom nodded along with every lie. They believed it all or pretended to. Jake could see the fear in their eyes. They were scared to disagree with the collective. After 6 hours, Cuthbert finished. "The evidence is clear," he said. "This human is guilty of aggression, conspiracy, and threatening the peace. I asked for the maximum punishment. Now it was Linda's turn." She stood up slowly, looking around the massive courtroom. Jake could see, her hands shaking, but her voice was steady. "Honorable judges," she began, "I stand before you not just to defend Commander Morrison, but to defend something much more important. I stand to defend justice itself." The judges looked annoyed. One of them, a blue alien with multiple arms, waved at her. "Defense lawyer, you may ask for mercy. Nothing else." "I am asking for mercy," Linda said, "but not just for my client. I'm asking for mercy for your entire system of justice, because it is on trial here today." The courtroom went very quiet. No one had ever heard a defense lawyer talk like this before. Cuthbert stood up. "The defense lawyer will follow proper procedure or be removed." Linda pulled out a thick book. "I am following procedure. This is the Original Charter of Justice, written by your own ancestors 800 years ago. Section 47 clearly states that any defendant has the right to challenge evidence presented against them." "That law is obsolete," Judge Bluearm said. "Actually, it's not," Linda said. "According to your own legal code, original charter laws can only be changed by a vote of all member species. That vote never happened. This law is still valid." Jake watched the judges whisper to each other. They looked worried now. Linda continued, "I invoke the ancient right of evidence challenge. I demand that the prosecution prove their evidence is real." "This is ridiculous," Cuthbert said. "The accused confessed." "Did he?" Linda asked. She walked to the center of the courtroom. "Let's examine this confession." It was recorded while Commander Morrison was unconscious. The collective's own medical records show that he was under the influence of neural manipulation drugs. She held up a data pad. "These are the chemical readings from his blood. The levels show clear evidence of memory alteration substances." "Where did you get those records?" Cuthbert demanded. "From your own medical facility. As defense counsel, I have the right to examine all evidence." "Another law that you seem to have forgotten." Jake could hear murmuring from the crowd. Some of the aliens were sitting up straighter, paying attention for the first time. Linda kept going. "Let's look at the witnesses. These people claim they saw Commander Morrison planning an attack. But according to the station's own logs, none of these witnesses were even on Harmony Point when the supposed planning took place." She showed the data to the judges. "Here are the transportation records. Witness A was on his home planet. Witness B was in medical treatment. Witness C doesn't exist in any collective database." Cuthbert was getting angry. "Defense lawyer, you will stop this immediately." "I will not stop," Linda said, "because I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. The enforcement drone that supposedly malfunctioned because of human aggression." She pulled out another data pad. "I had an expert examine the wreckage. The drone didn't malfunction because of outside interference. It had a defective power core that was scheduled for replacement 3 months ago. Your own maintenance records show this." The judges were whispering urgently among themselves. Judge Bluearms hit the table with something that looked like a hammer. "These records are classified," he said. "Not anymore," Linda said. "I'm making them part of the trial record. Every species in the collective has the right to see evidence in a public trial." Jake realized what Linda was doing. She wasn't just defending him. She was using the trial to expose the whole corrupt system. And it was being broadcast live across the galaxy. On his ship, Sam Rodriguez was working hard to make sure that broadcast reached everywhere. He had hacked into the collective's communication network and was sending the signal to every planet, every ship, every station. For the first time in centuries, Billions of beings were watching someone fight back against the system that oppressed them. Linda wasn't done. "I want to call a witness," she said. "Defense lawyers cannot call witnesses," Cuthbert said. "Actually, they can. Original Charter, Section 51. I call High Arbiter Cuthbert himself to the witness stand." The courtroom exploded in noise. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Cuthbert stood frozen, not sure what to do. "I refuse," he said finally. "You can't refuse," Linda said. "You're the one who presented the evidence. If you won't explain how you got it, then it must be thrown out." Jake watched the judges panic. They had never faced anything like this. Their system was designed to crush people who were alone and scared. But Linda wasn't alone, and she wasn't scared. She had the law on her side, their own laws. "This trial is getting out of hand," the chief judge said. "We will take a recess." "No," Linda said. "The charter says that once evidence challenge is invoked, the trial must continue until all evidence is examined. You cannot recess." She had trapped them with their own rules. In his cell that night, Captain Ryan Webb had been busy. He had recorded everything and found a way to send it to the other prisoners. Word was spreading through the crystal prison like fire. "Did you see what the human lawyer did?" whispered an alien that looked like a walking tree. "She used their own laws against them." "I thought those old laws were gone forever," said another prisoner. "Maybe we don't have to stay quiet anymore," said a third. Jake could hear similar conversations all through the prison. Something was changing. The other prisoners were starting to hope for the first time in years. The next day, when they brought Jake back to court, he noticed something different. The aliens in the audience were sitting up straighter. They were paying attention instead of just pretending to watch. Linda stood up to continue her defense. But before she could speak, something amazing happened. A message came through the communication system. It was from the planet Xerion, one of the collective's member worlds. "The Xerion Council declares that we no longer accept the authority of the Supreme Arbitration Chamber. We demand a review of all trials conducted in the past century." Then another message came, and another. Planet after planet was rising up, inspired by what they had seen in the trial. The impossible was happening. The galaxy was learning to fight back. The messages kept coming. World after world was declaring independence from the collective's justice system. The trial that was supposed to show everyone the power of the Zephyrian courts was doing the exact opposite. Judge Blue Arms stood up, his multiple hands shaking. "This court will not be influenced by outside pressure. We will continue with the trial." But Linda had more surprises. "Actually, you can't continue. According to the Charter, Section 12, if 3 or more member worlds challenge the court's authority during a trial, the proceedings must be reviewed by the full assembly." "The full assembly hasn't met in 200 years, Cuthbert said. "Then I guess it's time for a reunion," Linda replied. Jake watched the judges whisper frantically among themselves. They were trapped. Every move they made, Linda had an answer. From their own laws. In space around the station, something incredible was happening. Ships from dozens of worlds were arriving, not to attack, but to witness. They wanted to see how this ended. Captain Ryan Webb had been busy too. While hidden in the prison, he had made contact with resistance groups that had been secretly organizing for decades. The trial was giving them courage to finally act. On the planet Kethra, workers stopped going to their jobs. On Zephlon Prime, students marched through the streets. On distant Outpost 7, alien families who had lost loved ones to the corrupt. Courts finally spoke out about what had really happened. Paul Curtis, the Endeavor's chief engineer, was helping coordinate everything from orbit. He had turned the human ship into a communication hub, making sure every rebel group could talk to each other. "The collective's control network is falling apart," he reported to Kate Johnson, the communications officer. Their own people are, refusing to follow orders. Back in the courtroom, the chaos was getting worse. More messages were coming in every minute. The Trilaxian Empire had withdrawn from the collective entirely. The Morphic states were demanding new elections. The Silicon Worlds had declared martial law and kicked out all collective representatives. Kethver tried to regain control. This trial is about one human criminal. These other matters are not relevant. Actually, they are, Linda said. She was calm while everyone else panicked. Because this trial has revealed that your entire system is based on lies. Every conviction in the past 800 years is now in question. She turned to face the cameras that were broadcasting across the galaxy. How many innocent people have died in your courts? How many families have been destroyed by your fake evidence and forced confessions? The courtroom was dead silent. Even the judges had no answer. Then something happened that no one expected. One of the judges spoke up. It was the smallest one, who looked like a furry lizard. I vote to acquit the human, Judge Small Fur said quietly. Everyone stared at him. Judge Blue Arms looked shocked. You can't do that. We haven't even finished hearing the case. I've heard enough, Judge Smallfur said, his voice getting stronger. This system is evil. I won't be part of it anymore. Another judge stood up. This one looked like a giant bird. I also vote to acquit. This is mutiny, Kethver shouted. No, said Judge Birdbeak. This is justice, real justice. Something we haven't had in centuries. Jake felt hope for the first time since his arrest. But he knew it wasn't over yet. The other judges still looked angry and scared. Judge Blue Arms pointed at Jake. This human is responsible for destroying the peace of the galaxy. Look what his trial has caused. Worlds in rebellion, the system falling apart. Good, Jake said. It was the first time he had spoken during the trial. If your peace requires injustice, then it deserves to fall apart. The courtroom erupted in noise. Some aliens cheered. Others looked shocked that Jake had dared to speak. Linda smiled. She had been waiting for this moment. Commander Morrison has the right to speak in his own defense. Charter Section 15. We know the charter, Kethver said through gritted teeth. Do you? Jake asked, standing up. Because from what I've seen, you've forgotten everything it stood for. He looked around the courtroom at all the aliens watching him. You want to know what humans are really like? We don't give up when things get hard. We don't stay quiet when we see injustice. And we don't let bullies hurt innocent people, even if those bullies have fancy titles and big armies. The cameras captured every word. Across the galaxy, beings who had lived in fear for centuries heard a different kind of voice, someone who refused to be broken. Your system worked by making people afraid, Jake continued. But fear only works if people stay isolated and alone. You made one mistake. You put this trial on television. He gestured to the cameras. Now everyone can see that you're not as powerful as you pretended to be. You're just scared beings who got addicted to controlling others. Kethvar was furious. Silence the prisoner. But the enforcement robots didn't move. Jake realized that some of them were probably controlled by people who were having second thoughts about the system they served. Linda stepped forward. The defense rests. We demand an immediate vote from all 7 judges. I vote to acquit, said Judge Small Fur. I vote to acquit, said Judge Bird-Beak. The third judge, who looked like a walking crystal, stood up slowly. For 800 years, I have sent innocent people to their deaths. I vote to acquit. That was 3 votes. Jake needed 4 out of 7 to go free. The fourth judge was huge, like a bear made of rocks. This human has destroyed everything we built. But maybe what we built needed to be destroyed. I vote to acquit. 4 votes. Jake was going To be free. Judge Blue Arms and Keth looked at each other in panic. They had never imagined this could happen. This court is dissolved, Kethfer announced. The trial is over. You can't dissolve the court in the middle of a trial, Linda said. The vote must continue. The fifth judge, who hadn't spoken yet, finally stood up. She looked tired, like she had been carrying a heavy weight for years. I have spent my life serving a lie, she said. I vote to acquit. 5 votes. Jake was not just free. He had won. But the most important thing wasn't his. Freedom. It was what happened next. The sixth judge, a young Zephyrian who had probably never voted against the system before, stood up with tears in his eyes. I vote to acquit, he whispered. That left only Judge Blue Arms. He sat alone at the end of the bench, the last defender of a system that was already dead. He looked at Jake, then at Linda, then at the cameras broadcasting his decision to the galaxy. Finally, he spoke. I vote to acquit. 7-0. Unanimous. The courtroom exploded in cheers. Jake felt Amy grab his arm. Somehow, she had been freed from her cell and brought to watch the end of the trial. But Jake knew this was bigger than just his freedom. This was the moment when the galaxy learned it could fight back and win. The Zephyrian Collective would never be the same. Jake walked out of the Supreme Arbitration Chamber as a free man, but the galaxy he stepped into was completely different from the one he had left. The Collective's government was falling apart faster than anyone had expected. Within hours of his acquittal, 12 more worlds had declared independence. The Zephyrian home world itself was dealing with massive protests as their own people demanded change. Linda found Jake outside the courtroom, where crowds of aliens were celebrating. Some of them had been prisoners in the Crystal Jail. Others were family members of people who had died in the corrupt courts. They all wanted to thank the humans who had somehow done the impossible. How did you know it would work? Jake asked her. Linda smiled, but she looked exhausted. I didn't. I just knew we had to try. Sometimes doing the right thing is more important than winning. Amy walked up to them, her security uniform torn but her spirit intact. Sir, Captain Webb says the Endeavor is ready to take us home whenever you are. Jake looked around at the chaos. Alien ships were leaving the station in all directions. Some were heading home to start new governments. Others were forming groups to help planets that wanted to break free from the Collective. We can't leave yet, Jake said. This is just the beginning. He was right. Over the next few days, Jake and his crew found themselves in the middle of the biggest political change the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together. Worlds that had been silent for decades were finding their voices. But it wasn't all celebration. The old Zephyrian leadership was fighting back. High Arbiter Kethfer had fled to a remote military base and was trying to organize forces loyal to the old system. Some planets were torn apart by civil wars between those who wanted freedom and those who preferred the old order. Paul Curtis worked day and night to keep communication networks running. The rebels needed to coordinate their efforts, but the Collective was trying to cut off their signals. It's like playing chess with a computer that keeps changing the rules, Paul told Kate Johnson as they worked to repair damaged communication relays. Kate was busy translating messages between dozens of different alien languages. At least it's not boring, she said with a tired grin. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Webb was doing something completely different. He had taken the recordings he made during Jake's imprisonment and was showing them to other prisoners who were still trapped in Collective jails. Your governments think you're dead, he told a group of aliens who had been locked up for years. But they're not. They're fighting to free you right now. The crystal prison that had held Jake was emptying as more and more worlds demanded the release of their people. Some prisoners had been locked up so long They had forgotten what their home planets looked like. Sam Rodriguez, the technical specialist, had perhaps the hardest job of all. He was trying to help new governments set up fair justice systems to replace the corrupt courts. It's easy to tear down something bad, he explained to a group of alien leaders. It's much harder to build something good. Jake found himself traveling from world to world, not as a conqueror, but as an advisor. People wanted to know how humans had developed their ideas about justice and freedom. We didn't figure it out overnight, he told a gathering of alien representatives. On the planet Nexus 7, it took us thousands of years and a lot of mistakes. The important thing is to keep trying to do better. Some worlds wanted Jake to become their leader, but he always refused. That's not how this works, he would say. You have to choose your own leaders. That's what freedom means. The hardest moment came when they found the records of everyone who had died in the collective's courts over the past 800 years. The number was staggering. Millions of innocent beings killed to maintain the illusion of order. Linda spent weeks going through the files, trying to identify victims and notify their families. Many times, Jake found her crying over her work. We saved you, she said to him one day, but we couldn't save them. No, Jake agreed, but we made sure no one else will die the same way. That has to count for something. As months passed, the new galactic order began to take shape. Instead of one massive empire controlling everything, dozens of independent governments formed a loose alliance. They called it the Free Worlds Federation. The Federation's first meeting was held on Harmony Point Station, in the same room where Jake had first been arrested. But now the room was full of democratically elected representatives instead of appointed officials. We gather not to rule over others, but to serve them, said the Federation's first president, an alien from the planet Kethra who had been elected by representatives from 47 worlds. Jake watched from the gallery as the new government wrote its founding documents. The first law they passed was simple. No being shall be punished without a fair trial, and no trial shall be held without the right to challenge evidence and call witnesses. It was a law that would have saved millions of lives if it had existed. 800 years earlier, the Zephyrian Collective still existed, but only as a shadow of its former self. Most of their member worlds had left. The Supreme Arbitration Chamber had been permanently closed. Its crystal structure turned into a memorial for the victims of injustice. Some of the old judges, like the ones who had voted to acquit Jake, were working to reform their home worlds. Others, like Kethvar, had disappeared into exile, unable to accept that their time was over. On the day Jake and his crew finally left to return to Earth, hundreds of aliens came to see them off. Many brought gifts, artworks, poems, songs, all created to honor the humans who had changed their lives. You gave us something we had forgotten we could have, said one alien, a young Trilaxian whose parents had died in the old courts. You gave us hope. Jake shook the alien's hand. We didn't give you anything. You always had it. You just needed permission to use it. As the Endeavor pulled away from Harmony Point Station, Jake stood on the bridge looking back at the galaxy. They were leaving behind. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts and problems that would take years to solve. But it was free. Sir, Amy said, Earth Control is asking for our report. What should I tell them? Jake thought about everything that had happened. The fear, the courage, the moment when an entire galaxy decided it didn't have to accept injustice anymore. Tell them we made some new friends, he said, and that humanity has a lot to learn from them, and maybe a few things to teach them too. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Jake reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't won through superior weapons or technology. They had won by refusing to give up on the idea that justice mattered, even when it seemed impossible. The Collective's mistake had been thinking that humans were just another species that could be bullied into submission. They had never encountered a people who believed that some things were worth fighting for, no matter what the cost. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. Now that they knew they weren't alone in believing that freedom and justice were worth any sacrifice. Behind them, across dozens of worlds, beings who had lived in fear for centuries are learning to speak up, to question authority, to demand better from their leaders. The age of the collective was over. The age of freedom had begun, and it all started because they made a human stand trial in their court.